Hi and good evening. Welcome to How to Repair Pendulum Clocks live chat. I'm typing and clock repairing at the same time and talking, so all a bit chaotic. Thanks for joining us. Oh, great. I've already got Rachel there, so that's good news. Although Team Up and Clock Club are, as always, not with us at the beginning because they've got other things to do. So, yeah, welcome. Turn it off. This program, so far, we will get through it, move on to something else eventually, has been about this early 19th century European toll case clock. And we've been working through the going train, that's the time side of things, working our way up from the bottom of the train, the gearbox. Hi, Jim. And we last week got up to the escapement because next week we want to get it running. If I can today, I want to make a suspension spring. But before we do that, I've got to get the escapement finished. So I have been working on it a little bit as promised. And we've got to the stage now where the escapement just isn't working, which maybe sounds a bit crazy, but it's exactly where we want it to be. And I'll just explain that if you can see I just need to rearrange my many screens, that's better. Okay, if you can see the escapement here, just whizzle it around a little bit. So what we've got here, I'll get a pointy stick. Always useful to have a pointy stick. Oh, hi, Ian and Ken. Nice, thank you for joining. So back to our picture. Let's, maybe the focus will hold there. So the pallets here, this component got two active surfaces, one here, which is the one that we're refacing, and the other one somewhere across here, there. And maybe what you can see, the wheel here, this bit, the escape wheel, as we see it, is rotating anti-clockwise. We're looking from the back of the clock. Eventually, this will have a seconds hand fixed directly to it. Hi, Jeremy, and hi, Emma. And good, nice, lovely to see you all. So this is going to go clockwise as you look from the front of the clock, which is round here anyway. And so we've been refacing this pallet here, and you can see there's a new piece of material there soldered to it. I'm only doing one side. I haven't removed any more material from that pallet face. I'm just adding material on. And that's normally the case. In this case, we're kind of quite lucky because this component here, the retaining screws go in slotted holes, so slightly elongated holes, which gives us a bit of latitude for moving the thing up and down. So anyway, last week we got this piece of metal here that you can see there stuck on temporarily, and I've been stoning it down, and we can see there, let's just get so the escape wheel, if you look at the exit pallet, so that's to the left of your shot, the active tooth, which is here somewhere, is pushing down on the pallet, pushing the pallet round, sorry. So push, 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 there we are. And what should happen is that there should be drop at that point. And there, in fact, we got a bit of drop there. So the tooth can escape. Now on the other side, there we are. What we've got is, so this is going to be internal drop. What we've got is the other pallet active now. You can see the tooth rotating the pallets and therefore impulsing the pendulum. Hi, Franklin and Vicky. And what's happened, look, maybe you can't quite see here. So just on the end of our tooth here, it's just jamming. So we've got zero drop. Now we'll redraw this because I know some people are new here this evening. The rest of you have seen it 1,000 times. Maybe you can go for a cup of tea or something. But I'll just redraw it very quickly to explain this idea of internal drop, external drop, because I think we're still seeing people, obviously, who struggle with this concept. And I totally agree. It takes a lot of getting your head around. So what I'm going to do next is to take off that piece of material, harden it, stick it back on again, and then do final finishing. If you do final finishing now, then you do any more polishing, then those drops open up a little bit more. So very quickly, if I can find a bit of paper. What we've got here, let's just draw the great to see you all on Facebook, by the way, during the week, or many of us. The edge of our sheet is the edge of our sheet. This is to kind of draw in the parameters that I know where I am. Okay. So what we've got is, in this case, we've got our wheel rotating counterclockwise as we're looking at it. The focus. Yeah, in its own sweet time. And we've got two pallet faces. So like you have on the vast majority of escapements, until you get into chronometer escapements and things, got two working surfaces: verge escapement, anchor recoil escapement, basically the same thing. One is effectively horizontal as we're looking at it, and the other one is vertical, and they're joined. Let's have a look. Here's our center axis, and something like this. Very incredibly roughly. There we are there. So what we've got here, and I'm expecting the people who've seen this 10 or 12 times now that they can now give this lesson with their eyes closed. They're our active surfaces. And drop, so drop is the free angular rotation of the escape wheel, and therefore the rest of the train as well, between phases of impulse. And drop is has to exist. You need some, but if you get excessive drop, you get a loss of energy. So we've got drop from this point here. Remember, our tooth is rotating counterclockwise to that point. This is called internal, because it's between the span of the pallets. And then we've got drop from this point here, which goes all the way around and lands on there. And that we call external. Scruffy. Anyway, so as clocks wear, of course, the escape wheel wears smaller, and both these working surfaces wear away. And so eventually we decide to replace that material. And what I've done is, rather than putting material on both faces, because there actually wasn't masses of room, and this working surface was in really good condition, it had been refinished at some point, but anyway, what I did was, I'll draw this oversized, is I stuck on a piece of steel like that, a piece of carbon steel. Hi, Simon. And what that means is that both with one piece of material, both external drop, you can see here, this distance has been reduced, and internal drop from this point here to this point here are reduced in one go. So that's fantastic. So what I did last week was, a little bit earlier on today, is I've been filing this material down here to get to the point where we have effectively got zero drop. So the clock won't run on external drop, which is what we want. And then just now, I've been cutting this surface back, and you just saw that we've got to the point where the tooth, or the active tooth, is jammed between this point and this point, because that's fine. We're going to now remove this piece of material. We're going to harden it and polish it, stick it back on again, and then we're going to finish it, and then just do a little bit more reduction of material, which will develop our drop, which is tiny, and we should be okay. So that's that. I need to get on with it. Any questions? I might be able to ask them, answer them, sorry, and or ask them. That's probably more like it. Right, let's have a look. So let's just go back to focusing like this if we can. There's our pallet frame, and you can see the new piece of material that I've stuck on here, and it's shaped up quite nicely. I've been stoning it, so it's nearly there. Anyway, so we want to get it off. It's soldered on, so hardly any methylated spirits left in my like that, and get ourselves a brush. Normally, to get the piece of metal off, normally I just keep brushing it as the metal heats up. I'm using this spirit lamp because, as I say every week, it gives you nice controlled flame. You don't want to go in there with a big flame because you just end up making everything black and burning it. So we want to remove this piece of material now. Now, normally I would have had the brush soaking, but I haven't been that organized. So I'm just going to use my squirty water and give that a bit of a dampening so it doesn't singe too much. And let's just get that bit of material off. So we just keep heating it nice and slowly. Remember this, these two components, the pallets and the pallet arbor, the arbor being the axle about which the pallets rotate, are actually joined together by soft soldering too. So what we don't want to do is to get the thing so hot that it melts that, otherwise we'll have a problem on our hands. So there we are. If you saw that, it flicked off. So just raising the temperature, brushing it a little bit, and all good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put on the back of this little piece of metal a mark with my graver. I could use this. This is a really useful tool, by the way. I know we all love catching my sleeve on fire, hair, eyebrows, back of my hand, trousers, you name it. It's all been on fire and a whole lot worse. I'm just trying to think of the, buildings as well nearly, but that's another story. So this is quite a useful tool. It's an incredibly useful tool. It's called a bearing scraper, and it's not really a clocky tool. They use it in printing, but it's just really good for removing small amounts of material. You can buy them from printing suppliers if you're lucky enough to live in London, or unlucky enough to live in London. Then Cornelison's on Great Russell Street have them in stock. Anyway, what I want to use it for isn't printing at all, or printing full stop. Let's just see if we can encourage our camera to focus. It's pretty small, little bit of material there, I suppose. So being slightly what I want to do with this is to put a little mark in the back. If you ever kind of work on things, maybe like carriage clocks sometime, but things like marine chronometers and so on, often on the back of polished components, you see a little triangular mark. And what that mark is I'll just get my gravers. If you get a square section or lozenge section graver like this, then if you want to polish something flat so you can hold it, you just put a little mark in the back like that, and then you can move it around. Comme ça. So that's what I want to do anyway. So I'm going to look for a bit of Arkansas stone. which I had out earlier. Here we are, like this. And again, I'm going to put a bit of this bit of water on there, like that. I've already polished this piece of steel up to, well, polished it, finished it to on the ceramic stone, the 1000 grit ceramic stone I use the whole time. So it's reasonably flat, but it's not particularly good finish. Now, what I want to do is get it as good a finish on the working surface as I can before I harden it, because obviously once it's hard, it's really difficult to finish it. So just find that little thing. And the beauty of doing it like this with the graver is that it remains perfectly flat. And don't get me started about abrasive paper, because of course, I can start myself about abrasive paper. The problem with abrasive paper is it makes everything squidgy and rounded. And one of the cornerstones of horological manufacture is crisp, angular detail. When you're making new stuff, as I'm doing here, of course, it doesn't matter. You can do what you want. But if you're working on old stuff, old components, then I would suggest to quote unquote respect that detail. Now, this stone's actually very fine. It's not cutting as much as I might have liked. Let's just have a look. No, you see, it's just polished a tiny little bit in the middle there. You can see that. If you can just pull the focus a bit. It's just kind of skidding about on the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dash off and get my finer ceramic stone. Maybe let's just try this, but with a bit less pressure on it first. Otherwise, we'll be there all day. We've got other things to do. But yeah, if you want to polish things flat, you can actually, this is, see how easy it is to hold it with that graver point. I don't want to thin it too much. Just flat it out a bit more. So this is just the same action as sharpening your graver. Which reminds me of our amazing tool giveaway. If you are a beginner here joining us this evening, or you know a beginner, then one of our Facebook group has kindly donated some tools, which we're going to give away at Saturday's Festival of Ideas special Open Clock Club. So please come along to that and enter our free prize draw. In that box of tools are 2 graver jig sharpener things, which I never use. So, because if you want to sharpen your graver, you can just put it on here, and I would do the same action. Just kind of got distracted now. Figure of 8 action like this. I don't really ever bother with a jig. It can be useful, I suppose, again, if you're a beginner. That's how I'd sharpen the graver. And then, of course, the usual thing of checking that it sticks in your thumbnail to indicate, or your fingernail, in fact, indicate that it's sharp. Right, I'm just going to dash and get the finer ceramic stone for this. So entertain yourselves for a minute. Let's just try this. I won't labor this too much. You get the idea. The point being that it's a heck of a lot easier to sharpen it when it's flatten it out, at least when it's soft, and finish when it's hardened. It's absolutely true, of course, that if you really want material to be super shiny, like a kind of black polish, then you can't do that when it's soft. You have to harden the material, which I think is why. Oh, that's much better. Wind. The window's open today, so it's quite noisy in the traffic, which is actually really nice. But anyway, so yeah. So I've moved on to I think this is 6,000 grit ceramic stone. Quite a jump between the two, quite a leap. This tool's not as sharp as the grave, but the grave was the tool for the job. Yeah. That feels like it's getting there. Just have a quick look. Great. There are a few score marks in there, but we might leave those till another time. Pop those up there. So what I want to do now is to harden this, and then we can just get some of that. There we go. Just going to harden it in water, in cold water. So heat it to bright cherry red, quench it. I'm not going to temper it at all because it's, dead hard gauge plate, this kind of tool steel is going to be very brittle. So normally you would temper back, so you would reduce the brittleness and increase the strength. But you don't have to here because it's fully supported by that solder and then the pallet underneath, so it'll be absolutely fine. So do this very quickly. Just looking around for many things that I haven't squared up since last time. One of which is this. Was my piece of metal. So we've got our fire resistant board. In fact, what I might do, rather than even normally make a kind of iron, what do they call it? Iron binding wire, sort of little curly sleeve to hold it. But I might actually just hold it in these relatively inexpensive brass tweezers and just drop it straight into the water. That might work, be quicker. And if I hold it with the face down, with the polished, oh, you can't see it there, sorry. If I hold it with the polished side down like that, then maybe it'll also prevent a bit of fire stain on the active side. There we go. So let's find some cold water. There we go. You can see it's like actually cold. And yeah, save a bit of time here. Just heat it on there. There we go. Heat it on there, straight in the water. Job done. So I've just got a sort of propane gas thing. And my sparky lighter, which is really useful. Get that. Activate the microphone. Okay, so you can see the color changing through the temper colors. Brown, straw brown, blue, white. And now it's beginning to glow. We want it to be quite bright orange. Once we get it to bright orange, hold it for about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. It's quite a thin piece of material. And then it landed on that, I do actually wonder, because it landed on that bit of ice, whether it actually, cool that down a little bit, whether it actually quenched it quickly. Maybe it didn't. I was a bit too clever for that. Normally I'm use a bit of ice because it seems to make a big difference. You know, if you just get cold water from the tap and ice, it seems to make a big difference to the hardening process. Anyway, so maybe that didn't work. So it sort of landed on a little iceberg. Anyway, doesn't matter what it would do, because we can test it with a file and try it. So let's have a look. Here's a bit of material. Yeah, if you want to test whether it's hard or not, just get hold of it and get a file. Maybe not your best file. Hundreds of tools. And then just yeah, it's not massively hard. If it's dead hard, then the file will just skid off this tool steel. It's I think the file will have kind of touched the corner. I suppose we better do that again. Doesn't take too long. Get it this time so it actually goes into the cold bit of the water. That was better. There's a proper sort of hiss. Oh gosh, but steam. Excellent stuff. Right, now I've got to find it. Yeah, the iceberg idea was a nice idea, but needs needs a bit of perfecting. Right, let's try it now. Great. Okay, so amazingly, kind of world of difference there. The first time you can feel straight away that the file is digging in. Now that there's a different sound, it sounds much kind of higher pitched, and the thing is quite skiddy. So that's great. We need to clean up the side we're going to solder back onto our pallet. So let's just determine which side that is. So that's this side. And I'm going to do that. I'll just scrape off the kind of excess stuff with a scalpel first. The fire stain. Quite loose, that material, actually. It's good. I did wonder whether it would be a lot less faff without the binding wire. And again, you can use flux, or you can use a product called Argotect. Oh, hi, Derek. Argotect, which is a silversmith's product for anti-fire stain. But because we've got that thin layer of lead on there, the soft solder, just scalpeled my finger, then it scrapes off. So all good. Our challenge, though, is going to be getting it back in the right place, or something like the right place anyway. Just scraping the edges to make sure it's nice and clean. Remember, the cleanliness is one of the laws of soldering. You have to have the thing at the right temperature. You have to have somewhere for the solder to go. And first and foremost, the thing has got to be clean. But you can see there, got all the fire stain off. So we're good to go. Got our pallets here, which are still happy from before, he says. Whether we need any more solder on, I don't know. I'm going to try it without. There was quite a lot last time, and hopefully if there's still an amount of solder on there. I don't know whether there's enough or not. Let's get John's vise. Useful. And our little bit of metal. And some flux. So very, 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 very tempting to put a bit more solder on. I might. Let's just got our flux. And again, for people who haven't been here before, just use this regular kind of plumbing flux. This brand is LACO. I don't know what that stands for. No doubt somebody will know. But anyway, it's American. Well, there you go. Can you believe it? There we are. Use that flux. And a bit of soft solder, just regular electronic soft solder. But again, the important thing here is to make sure that everything is completely clean, even the solder. I don't think for electrical soldering people bother cleaning the solder. Well, I'm sure they don't, in fact, but I want everything to be as good as I can, or as clean as I can. So for final cleaning prep, just got a little bit of steel wool. Normally I use 4/0 steel wool, but I can't quite see it at the moment. Reasonably tight. Same for the solder. Clean that. Slightly paranoid about that. Rather do it once and then move on to something more interesting. So there's a weeny little bit of new sold. I'm not going to put any on the back of the new piece of material, but what I am going to do is put a bit of flux on there. So get a flux brush. Don't forget to wrap arbor. Oh yeah, I forgot to wrap the arbor. You're right, Derek. When you're, as I said before, the collet here is soft soldered onto the arbor. So if you just get it too hot, there's a chance it'll move. So it's a good idea to put a bit of wet cotton cloth or some kind of damp, some cool gel or something on there, just to prevent that collet from heating up, or a heat sink. So tiny bit of flux on there. Tiny bit of flux on our piece of steel. Remember, flux is corrosive, so you need to wash everything, the brush, the tweezers, you name it, you need to wash it afterwards in hot soapy water, otherwise everything gets corroded. Right, I'm gonna have to just have a little close look at this now to check that it's in the right place. So probably need, yeah, 6 different pairs of glasses at this point. Just swizzle this round. Put that on. It's going to be quite difficult to get it on in the right place straight away. So I think, come on. I think what I'll have to do is to move it about a bit, but I'll just check with my eyeglass that I think it's at least in the right place. But first I'll get my spirit lamp again. Yeah, a little bit of meth still in there. Light it. No, there isn't enough meth in there. Need some more methylated spirits. Better? Right, I'll move that out of the way so I to myself. I'm just going to have a little look at this positioning of this component now before we actually solder it on. Yeah, it's going to be tricky to tell. So let's just remember what Derek said and find ourselves a bit of cloth. Thank you for that. And go. That'll just act as a bit of a heat sink. Get it in the shot so you can see what's going on. So I'll just put my tweezers on there, and I'll be, because I've put a tiny bit of silver, I'll be able to feel when the pallet sinks down. Then we might have to do a bit of repositioning. So you see our solder melt. Of course, the problem then is that the piece of material just floats about on top of the solder, making it slightly tricky too. What I did was I actually filed it down, not right up to the edge of the pallet, because I don't want to file onto the pallet frame, but I did kind of make it maybe a bit neater than I should. I should have probably left it sticking out a bit more, which would have given me a little bit more leeway. Right, okay, so it needs to be pushed along probably about 0.2 quarter of a millimeter, something like that, 0.3 maybe. And I can tell, or I think I can tell that anyway, because of the back of the pallet, I'd filed it pretty level with it. So it gives us a bit of a reference. So I'm just going to reheat it. And then just move it along a little bit. It's nice and square, but it's not quite in the right position. And we don't want to get it too hot, of course, because it'll temper our piece of steel. We want that steel to remain as hard as possible. Should be able to do it. If you got the lowest melting point, easiest soft solder you can, you should. And also this gauge plate is actually quite tricky to temper. It's once it's hard, it's quite an animal. So right. Nearly there. Just want a little bit more repositioning. I suppose, again, maybe you remember last week, if you were here last week, what I did was I started off with it as a long piece of material, then snapped it off. Might have actually been a good idea to just keep it like that. Then at least we'd have something to hold on to. So I'm just going to budge it along a little bit more. Right. So we're now keeping everything crossed for a bit of material memory. I'm sure it knew where it needed to go. Yeah, so the lesson there, if you can be patient, which I can't, is to leave it a little bit wider, a little bit longer, maybe with a handle on it, which would have been cool. Then you can always, if you've got those diamond files, you can file it to dimension later. Right, let's have a look at that. Yeah, I think I'm going to have quite a bit of diamond filing to do on that surface, but anyway, I can get that whizzed off. So the first thing I want to do now is to just tidy up this working surface. So I'll go back to my ceramic stone. Hopefully there's enough. It's not going to be so easy for you to see, but anyway. I don't know if you can hear that, but you can hear that the bit of steel is still really hard and kind of slippy on the stone, which is good. It's exactly what we want. I don't want to really remove much material. Just you can see there there isn't much there at all. Look, nearly there. A few more strokes with this, which is totally at the wrong height. Normally I'd just move across the bigger vise, but as we're trying to share this. So still a little bit of mark in the middle there, so a bit more. It's the steel is incredible. Before it was hardened, you know, this ceramic stone was just chewing through this metal, but now it's kind of like really slippy. It's impressive. Well, I suppose this is the material that they make sort of dies and presses and punch tools out of an industry. So it's pretty awesome stuff. So nearly there, if you can see, nice and flat, which is what we're after. And then there's a bit of staining still here at the edge, but it's not actually on the part where the pallet's going to, the escape is going to touch, and it's not sort of three-dimensional. So I'm actually going to leave that and go on to the finer stone. We can always go back later and polish it, but it's again, I'm just keeping the two components together so that face stays flat. I want her. Right. Yeah, I mean, maybe actually probably during the week, I will polish that and I'll do it now. Can you see how, let's get it in the light, how great this bit is, but there's still this little bit of roughness on this side. So I do need to go back. Sorry about that. And get rid of that. Otherwise, I'll not be able to rest. So which side is it on? It's on this side. So I can just kind of encourage it across onto that side a little bit without it digging in. I don't want that surface to dig in. So now you can see why I wasn't particularly bothered about that external drop being kind of like jamming almost, because we're losing, I mean, we're not, it looks like a lot of work here, but we're not losing much material. But we're losing some. You know, this stuff is all cumulative, like any kind of refinishing. Right, nearly there. I'm thinking ahead now to my suspension spring. I really want to get on with that. Tiny little bit left in the corner. You can see that, but I really aren't going to worry about that. I can live with that. Great. Bit of dirt on it there. Really happy with that. You can see it's just a tiny bit of, it's not even, well, I mean, it is roughness, I suppose. It's just needs a bit more stoning in the corner. But anyway, that's good. Very happy. Oh, turn my camera off. How did that happen? I think we're back. We're back. There we go. Okay. So please, let's just try a bit of autofocus. So you can see that surface is reasonably flat. It just got that little bit up this end, which might need a bit more polishing up, but you know, it's away from the working surface anyway, so I ain't bothered. Let's try it back in the frame. Zoom out a bit if we can. And see what our drops look like. Very back cock. For new people here, again, I say it every week, that I normally wear nitrile gloves when handling any historic object, but I don't on these sessions because it's a real faff with the camera and taking them off, or they burn. So you don't want them on when you're using the heat. So rather than taking them off, put them back on. I don't wear them. Yeah, so we start with our back cock at its top position. If the back cock was steady pinned, we couldn't do anything about that. Right, so inevitably, because it's not quite as, it's further along than it was. Yeah, I've got quite a lot to come off there for our internal drop. If I can get it. There's external drop, look, so they just get it so you can see it. So we've got the pallet tooth on the exit pallet, and there's a bit of drop. Now we can reduce that to 0 because we can move the back cock down, as I've said many times, but we can't do much with the internal drop. So it's now time to, maybe I should have spent a bit longer and positioned it more accurately. But anyway, I didn't. So I'm gonna have to go for it with the diamond stone. So let's get that right there. Now again, I don't want to damage the pallet itself, so it's going to be quite tricky. I'll just check. Yeah, and it is again about 1/4 millimeter, maybe a bit more. So I'm going to work at it with the old Easy Lap, another made in America tool. So that's all good. And it's going to diamond. It will take some time because even with the diamond, this metal's really hard. It's worth it though. You'll find a lot of people reface with mainspring, just kind of like mainspring as it is. The problem with that is it's not particularly hard, well, you know, in relative terms. So I'd rather do this and spend a little bit longer fiddling with it and stoning it, rather than have the whole thing too soft. Again, just what I do is I put the hone down on the pallet and then I rotate it a little bit I don't know what that is, 2 or 3, no, more than that, 4 or 5 degrees, maybe 5 degrees. So I know that I'm away from the, and you can see I'm using my finger here to prevent the hone from touching the inside of the pallet frame, because I don't want to damage that file into it, basically. With a slightly coarser stone. It'll take an amount of time to get that material off, quite a lot to come off there. Just try it. I think we need about the same amount off again. So thinking ahead to our suspension spring, of course you can buy suspension springs off the peg, which is a kind of sensible way to do it. But I'm going to, when I say make one, just use a strip of steel and make the top. And there are advantages to doing that, and there are disadvantages. And of course, one of the disadvantages, it's probably more expensive to do it that way in time compared to getting an off the peg unit from your material supplier. But also, maybe not so much on this clock, but if you've got something like a regulator where the suspension springs are non, we're nearly there actually. Gosh, that's, you can just about, there's our external drop, and it's just actually jamming, look, on the corner. So happy times. Yeah, it is actually about the same amount of material to go again. So maybe this is something, let's just continue for another 10 minutes on this. Maybe we can do something more interesting. Maybe a slightly coarser diamond plate, something with a stronger backing would be useful. Right, so I need to reduce the amount of material that's on there by about half. I'm going to use this side of the stone because it's probably a bit less worn. But the crutch is in the way. So again, quite pleased that I've so far not made too much of a mess of the inside of the pallet. It's definitely wearing my finger away, so presumably it's also wearing a bit of steel away as well. Yeah, it's tricky doing it like that. I'll just try use the bit that's not so worn. Yeah. So yeah, quite a time-consuming process. Maybe the way I'm doing it's a little bit over the top. Just bang a bit of mainspring on and it'll last fine. But I say, you do see that wearing quite rapidly. The good thing about this is, if it works, which I don't see why it won't work, is I don't think we've removed any material from the pallet frame. So when we do it again, it's basically the kind of last time it sort of has to be done, because you can just put a new piece of metal on. Now this is going to Take forever. It's getting there. I'm just being impatient. And I've also started to stone it at an angle. So let's just remain patient. And slowly, slowly catch your monkey, as my old granny used to say. Not. Try and keep it square. Just using our Degusit stone. Or you could use the Arkansas or fine ceramic stone. Just going to radius this corner here. If you can see, but it's good finish on it, but there's a real burr there now. So that would cut the escape wheel like crazy if you didn't take that off. So put the stone, little aluminium oxide stone, dead flat on the pallet, and then just run it round the corner, which will just radius it slightly. Makes a nice squeaky sound. Don't want any burr on there. This steel is so hard, it would ruin our escape wheel. Looks like I'm taking an enormous corner off it, but it really isn't much. If you can see that, let's just get it focused. So there you can just about see the little kind of radius I've put on there. So let's try that. Yay, great. Just about sneaks through, as you can see, with it wouldn't run like this. It would run on some teeth. So the question is, where do I need to remove more material? And yeah, it's still on that surface. I think that's basically where it's jamming. Again, it's got some slight inconsistencies between some of the teeth, but they're tiny, considering it's a 250-year-old clock. So at this point, you might actually look at the escape wheel and check there aren't any burrs or bent teeth or anything. I'm not actually going to do that. But this is a great place to be. If you do it and the thing ticks straight away, I think the chances are that you've got more drop than you need to have. And I'd actually prefer to get it on test, which is going to be next week when we've got our suspension spring made. And then if there are one or two teeth that are slightly bent or something, then just eke off a little bit more then. I don't want to push the piece of metal off after all this pain that we've been through together. So another 3 or 4 minutes of stoning, and I think we're going to be there. As you saw, it ticks through on some teeth, not all. So we're in the zone or the ballpark or whatever it's called. I'm sure there's a Yorkshire expression for it, but I don't know what it is. So again, I just can't, every time I put the hone on, I'm just checking that it's free of the pallet, and I'm using my finger here just to push it out to the corner by a millimeter or so, so it doesn't rub. Just look and make sure it's still reasonably square. Yep, looks good. And I'm going to stone it and get that burr off. This is a really sickening bit where you're just doing this final polishing and your soft filtering comes undone, the whole thing drops off and you've got to solder it on again, but it seems to be okay. Really looking forward to our next live stream clock, the American clock. That's going to be good fun. I don't know anything really much about American clocks, so people are going to really have to help me out. No doubt it's going to be a bit controversial. But, where would it be without a bit of controversy? Still jamming a little bit. Anyway, I won't deal with that today. It's 98% of the way there. Get it out of the wheel. Makes a difference. There you go, you see, so great. They're like our 30-hour clock. Let's just see how far back we can go before it stops. There we go. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're on our 23rd to 23. It's jamming there. So you can either take the wheel out and have a look at that, straighten up a couple of teeth, just check there are any twists or burrs or things. Or I can just take another tiny amount off that entry pallet. So that's it, we're done. I'll fiddle with that during the week and have a look at the escape wheel. So the next thing is to think about our suspension spring. So in all this chaos, I can actually find the components. That'd be useful. We can put that to one side now. To go on the floor. So here's our suspension spring, and here's our crutch, sorry. Let's just. You may remember a couple of weeks ago, what we did was repair the crutch loop here. And it was all right. It's a silver soldered, so it's nice and strong. It's not the neatest job in the world, but it's okay. What I noticed before was that the block, irrespective of where it is along its length, is actually a reasonably sloppy fit. Now that we would be fine, the clock would run. I think I might actually add some material to the edge of the block, maybe just glue a piece of shim brass on to take up some of that slot, because that is loss of energy. I'll put some thick oil on it so it'll kind of glue the two things together. But yeah, but anyway, that's not our problem today. Our problem, our challenge today is making a suspension spring. So yeah, getting on my soapbox, of course, I've got to get the old spring out. Don't rivet these pins. It's just not necessary. You can see somebody here sort of really whacking at it. And I can imagine people I know and have worked with sort of getting their hammer and really riveting the pin over, just in case what happens. It's like when that meteorite that's 100 kilometers across is rushing towards the earth, you know, this pin is going to be the only thing, apart from rats and tarantula spiders, that survive it. Or no, I don't think I've set fire to much at all today. Been really good, thank you. So you don't need to rivet the pin. It just makes it difficult for everybody else in future. Anyway, so that's quite annoying, but there you go. It won't fall out if you make it a good fit, that is. So let's look at suspension springs. So this is the kind of thing that you can buy. This is for a fusee dial clock off the peg, which is okay. Don't know how thick it is. Probably about 0.1 of a millimeter. Measure up. Get the old bench micrometer. So this is, yeah, 0.1 of a millimeter. This is for a fusee dial clock, I think. I don't think it's for a long case clock, but it's okay. Long case clock is the same idea, but this top block should always be curved underneath, irrespective of whatever shape the backcock is. Sometimes the backcock's got a square, like this one, a kind of rectangular cutout, really long cutout here. I think it's been elongated. Yeah, it has. So from, you can see in there on the camera, there's a mark there where it used to be. The slot used to be that long, which is what you'd expect, and it's been stretched out that long. Presumably somebody had a problem with the movement not being straight, or I don't know. Anyway, for some reason they decided to file it. You can see they've gone about as far as they can go. So I could fill in that gap. Might do actually. Just stick something in there to take up the space, but I'll just leave it as it is. Once the pendulum's on, you know, it's not going to move anywhere again. That meteorite that's whistling towards the earth isn't going to touch it. So let's just find something else in here. I don't have one of those long case things with looking round rather desperately for a bit of material. Oh, there's the piece. There we go. Oh, that's really thick. So it's really important that this is curved underneath. And the reason for that is, if it doesn't matter how kind of square you get the clock, it's never going to hang straight down. It's always going to be slightly compromised, and that'll make the pendulum swing not in a clean arc. You can imagine that this is curved here, then it always hangs straight down. Well, gravity. So don't be tempted to make a square thing that fits into a square hole. Yeah, it's a bit irritating, that fact that it's been filed out. I might fill that in, but anyway, not today. Here's an old suspension off a long case clock, thicker spring, same thing. Now this actually would work because you can see that they've left it pivoted, so the pendulum can assume a vertical position. So that's kind of all right. But anyway, I'm rather awkwardly going to make mine curved. If we can get that in. No, we can't. But you can see if it's curved, it can just assume a vertical position is what I'm trying to say. So somewhere I've got some spring here, bit of blued steel spring, some quite old stuff, which is nice. Let's just have a look at, it's a bit rusty. So try and find a bit that isn't too rustic, because that's not going to be great. Might be a bit weak there. We don't want it breaking. It's all quite rusty. It seems reasonably. There you go. That bit's okay. So let's just measure it up. Anywhere between 0.1 and 0.15. Now we talked. This is 0.1 as well. Oh, there you go. We talked. There we are. On can't remember where it was, the Facebook thing, I think, forgotten now, about the thickness of the suspension spring. So the suspension spring effectively adds to gravity, so it adds to the restoring force. So a clock with a stronger suspension spring will gain. Doesn't really matter here. You've kind of got a compromise between that and will gain compared to a clock with a thinner spring. You know, mantle clock with a thick old spring, that's going to make a big difference. You might find that you can't regulate it enough. With this, I can't imagine, at least between like 0.1 and 0.15, that it makes a massive amount of difference. You can't just regulate out, but we'll find out, won't we? So here's our spring. It's about the right width, maybe a little bit narrow for the top block. Again, if you wanted a piece of material that was wider to make something bespoke, then get something like a bit of feeler gauge stock, you know, the feeler gauge thing that they use for engines, for that kind of thing, engineering. You can buy it in 1/2 inch wide pieces, and then you can just chisel a piece off the edge and get it whatever width you want. But anyway, this is normally about 1/4, something like that. So pretty good there. It's probably what was fitted to it. Ah, right, okay. Well, in fact, now I've looked properly. The top part of the suspension is actually being formed out of a cylinder. So it's a bit of cylindrical material that's kind of slightly, roughly being kind of forged around. So we don't want something that wide anyway, so this is good. So our next challenge is to get this dreadful rivet out. And I'm gonna have to drill it. I'll file off the surface first. So I'll need a bit of sticky tape. Here's some that just happen to be kicking about. Like that. And if we get what do we need? Boxwood filing rest. Boxwood filing rest. And we'll just file as much of that rivet off as possible. Then we may have to moderately, not depressing, but moderately kind of like just put the pin in, make the pin really good fit, draw file it, tap it in, and then the next person has a relatively easy life. So I've already filed down onto the thing, the block. Too annoyed. That's what I didn't want to happen. Sorry, I mustn't. So now I've made a little filed mark on there, which is annoying, but anyway. There you go. Right, so I'm going to center punch this, put a little mark there, center punch it, and drill it out because it's equally anti-Godzilla, riveted over on the other side as well. So did I mention not to rivet it over? Just only about 600 times. Here is it. So get a center punch. Yeah, because one knows with these things, and I suppose that's the joy or not of teaching, it's kind of nominally teaching, is that it's an endless journey, I suppose. You're not going to kind of say, please don't rivet the pin, just push the pin through and leave it. And that's going to be the end of it. It's ongoing. So that's both a joy and also a moderate frustration, as you can tell. So I'm just going to find the center of the pin with my tungsten carbide chap. Looks quite good there. And then just going to tap it a bit. I would normally just tap it once, because if you tap it twice or more times, like I just did, but I'm using the scriber actually is with a tungsten carbide tip, so light taps as to not to fracture the end. Not too bad at all. So now we need to drill that. Not quite know how I'm going to do that actually. I only want to really drill the head off the pin. I don't know whether it's tapered or not, whether it goes through in one direction. We'll only find that out in due course. But let's just, maybe a bit more. The actual center punch will help. I can find one that's actually got a tip on it, which will be challenging. Better to actually just have one center punch that was sharp the whole time rather than the dozen that I've got here. Yeah, they're all pretty blunt. Yeah, without resharpening this. Really, the problem with the blunt scriber center punch is it just end up with a kind of indistinct mess, and it's only me that's left them blunt, of course. I can't blame anybody else, but it doesn't fit in the hole properly. You punch it and it skews off to one side, so just you could sharpen it on an offhand grinder. Diamond will be quite good. They tend to be quite hot. It might draw the temper of the thing. So maybe, again, we can just, what I'm doing is rotating it under my hand and sharpening at the same time. So what we'll do next week, we will get the clock ticking next week, I'm sure. I'm going to finish that, removing it. I'm going to look at that escape wheel and just check there aren't one or two teeth that are a bit bent, and straighten them if necessary. Draw them out with a pair of brass or bronze tweezers. Then I'm going to get this rivet out, and then we'll be ready to make our spring, which is actually quite a quick job. I'm going to make the top, rather than, if you buy them commercially, and I think it's fine like that, you normally get two pieces of round material, kind of parted off bar or something, that are riveted together, which is fine to make a circle on which it rests. I'm actually going to make mine out of a bit of sheet, 108, CZ 108, the stuff that we make the springs out of, because you can bend it over. And the reason for that is I can make it longer at the top, so you can get hold of it when you're picking the pendulum off the back cock, which is quite nice. It's also easier to do it like that if you don't have a lathe. So yeah, busy weekend ahead, as always. We've got our special hour-and-a-half open clock club on Saturday. So please join us for that if you can. Right, that's good. That's sharp now. Yeah.
Say something about the way you clean up the stones.
Oh yeah, this. I use another stone. I've got 3 of these all together. I've got a coarse one which is very friable. Have I gone invisible, Derek? No, Derek, you're not invisible. Are we ignoring you? Sorry. I've got a coarse one which is 600 grit. Is it something like that? And what I do is I rub them together. If you can, if you've got the money, buy 2 at once. And with the ceramic stone, so why I prefer this over the oily one, is you can get one of those green sort of pan scrubbing pads, 3M Scotch Brite, under a running water, running tap, rinse off all the rubbish, then get the 2 stones and work them together. So I work them like this. I mean, I won't do it with this one, but I work them like that. Then I flip them around like, no, I don't flip both of them around, flip one around like that and work them again. And it keeps them both flat and it keeps them really clean as well. And they come up kind of like new. This is actually broken a few times, so I keep super gluing it together. But yeah, Scotch Brite pad and then have another stone, because the problem is that if you don't, it ends up not being flat. And that's no good. It doesn't help. So you need 2 really, and you work them against one another, and then just keep rotating them the whole time, and they remain flat.
I think Derek's question is something to do with wrapping the arbor. Don't forget to wrap the arbor. That was right at the beginning.
Oh yeah, I responded to it. I couldn't type, Derek, because team open clock clubs only just turned up. Sorry if you maybe missed that at the beginning. That's why I'm not typing. It's not me typing, honest. I'm clock fixing. No, don't forget to wrap the arbor. I did mention. You mean because of the heat on the collet? I did do that and took your advice. So thank you. No, you're not invisible. Please answer my question. Or is there another question, Derek? Maybe we missed the question. I'm just going to center punch this a bit deeper. With a slightly bigger hammer. Very wobbly and unsatisfactory. Has Derek gone now? Sorry, Derek, if we were ignoring you, we weren't meaning to do. Honest. Right, actually, let's be able to get that out now. It has moved it a bit, but this is all soft soldered together around here, so it's not particularly strong. The more things. Let's have a look. That's coming out. It's good. There we are. Good. So our rivet is out. That's probably a good place to leave it as any. As I've mentioned about 10 times already, when we replace that pin, we're not going to rivet it. We're just going to push the pin through as a good fit. So that leaves us, let's just see if we can get the end of the spring out, see if that's neat or not. That's not bad. Get in focus. Can you see my question? Maybe Derek's question's been censored by Google or whoever it is that runs YouTube. Maybe the space aliens have got it who were interested in this rivet. So anyway, there's our spring out. In fact, we can, it's a bit rusty, but we can measure it up. No, we can't measure it, it's too rusty. Okay, good. So that leaves us in a good place. Yeah, it's time we stopped anyway for next week. Everything's a bit graunchy around here. So we've got our new piece of spring, which is it's actually gonna need a little bit of filing to go in there anyway. So that's cool, happy with that. We'll punch a hole in it next week with the staking set, and I'll make my top out of a bit of sheet 108, and I'll have my test stand. Everybody will be delighted. No, can I, Derek? No. Can we scroll back through the live chat?
I've tried, but it's not there. Not Facebook.
No, sorry, Derek, your question doesn't appear to be there. You can either put it on Facebook, or if you're there on Saturday, ask it then, or hopefully it wasn't too desperate to wait until next week. I don't know where it's disappeared. It must have contained some information or words that Google didn't like, and they decided to censor it. Good. Okay, right. So I think that'll do. We've got a couple of things to do next week. One, of course, is to determine how long the suspension spring needs to be. Now, of course, as a rule of thumb, he said going on a little bit longer. As a rule of thumb, it would be in the middle of the top block here. And in fact, you can see, look there, there's a mark, an oily mark. So that'll be the place that we start. And then we'll put our rating nut halfway up its travel or down its travel, and then we'll see what the timekeeping is like. So we'll get that up and running next week. So as always, thank you very much for joining us, and we're getting there. Always takes 10 times longer than we think. Sorry for being a bit grumpy about the riveted over suspension spring rivet pin thing. I'll try and calm down. Oh, Derek's going to ask this question on Facebook. Yeah. Good. We'll see you on Facebook, Derek. But yeah, next week we'll have this going train at least ticking. Thank you, as always, to Open Clock Club, who's been helping out with the live chat towards the end of the session. And I say, hope to see you on Saturday. If we don't, we will see you next Thursday, or in the meantime on Facebook to ask any questions and contribute your projects, ongoing projects. So thanks very much. From us, it's bye for now.